Welcome to the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast.
Wherever you find American troops today, you'll find the men of the Transportation Corps. Enough and on time. That's the story we tell you today. The story of the Army Quartermaster Corps.
These youthful servicemen are members of the Army's Military Police Corps.
One of the most important forces behind the lines, the Army Ordnance Corps.
Welcome again to the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast. I am Sergeant First Class Adam Ross, Public Affairs NCOIC for 19th Expeditionary Sustainment Command. And today we are joined by Sergeant Major Adam Bartlett from our retention team and Sergeant Major Angelia Witter from G1. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And so today we are going to be talking about a number of things related to your career and to personnel and kind of new developments across the Army. So, Sergeant Major Witter, you got a number of topics you've brought here. Which one do you want to start with today?
Flip a coin. We could talk about the OML, the Staff Sergeant Evaluation Board that just recently was published on HRC.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's I think it's one of the first these new OMLs to come out. A lot of talk about that, and they're going to start promoting off that. I think next month. Is that right?
So they've already started promoting off of the Sergeant First Class Evaluation Board with the pin on date for Master Sergeants 1 June.
The Staff Sergeant OML, it goes by each MOS rather than releasing like in the past, like an actual, like who's definitely going to be promoted, like releasing a by selection list. Is actually ranking from 1 to
within their particular MOS. Yes. So the evaluation boards are now more in line with how sergeants and staff sergeants are, or specialists and sergeants are promoted to sergeant and staff sergeant. It's based off the requirements that are needed by the Army at the time. And also soldiers have to understand that even if they have an OML number of 1, meaning they're probably the most qualified in their MOS. If they're not fully qualified, meaning time of service, they haven't completed the required PME, they're flagged, or whatever the case may be, will not constitute an automatic promotion.
And a big one there when you said fully qualified, so that's going to change come 1 October with the new MILPER message for the time and grade requirements.
So yes, so fully qualified just means that you are in a line with the STEP that the Army implemented maybe about a year or so ago with the select, train, educate, and promote. So that's what NCOs need to understand, and not only just the NCOs but also leaders. We're so used to the legacy program where you get a sequence number and then you say, okay, I'm promotable. That is no longer the case now. Now is if you are, it's an order of merit list, and the Army is also using that order of merit list not only for selection for promotion, but also for selection to attend PMEs, also for selection when it comes to talking about aligning that soldier's talent and skills with a applicable job. And
so you could be the top ones on the OML will get the priority for going to, like, say, SLC or MLC. And so you could be on that list, but maybe not fully qualified for a few months because you haven't attended that school.
Yes, that is correct.
And what do you think are the benefits of moving to this new system, Sergeant Major?
So I believe some of the benefits to moving is that those who are fully qualified or they have completed the assignments, they have the skill sets that are needed for that position, are being promoted based off merit. Under the legacy program with the sequence numbers, if someone had the same rating from the board and they were both selected for promotion, then the selection would go based off, or who would get the lowest or the highest sequence number, however you look at it, would be based off data rank, or not necessarily data rank, but date of birth in that case. But this is about what that soldier or what that NCO actually brings to the table.
And then with that, we also have the MQ rating for something. So the only publicly released names for each MOS are the ones who got the MQ. And so that's where they got basically a perfect score from the board. Is that how that?
they got one of the highest scores from that particular MOS. Because you have to just remember that each panel consists of what that MOS is, and those board members or that panel member will address to those other sergeant majors that this is what we're looking for. This is what constitutes a most qualified if they hit the benchmarks accordingly to their MOS.
And Sergeant Major Bartlett, moving to you, what do you think are the positives of this new move?
Well, I think there are positives and drawbacks. So and Sergeant Major Witter can attest to, one of the things we used to have was you would have maybe, let's say out of the 42 alphas, 50 people are selected for promotion. Well, if you have 5 to 7 of those people who become disqualified for whatever the reason may be, you can't go back and move 5 to 7 people up on the list. So one of the positives is that Class 72 for the Sergeant Major Academy selected 560 some odd people. 130 of them declined to go for whatever reason. So now, if we did not have this system, that would be 130 Sergeant Major fills for after Class 72 graduates, in which we would not have predictability. So that's a positive. One of the drawbacks is, let's say I wasn't selected first or second time on the legacy system. I didn't know where I fell, because the only people who you knew exactly where they placed were those who had a sequence number, right? So I didn't know if 200 people competed. They only selected 50. I didn't know whether I was number 51 or number 200. Didn't know if I was on the brink or not, because those board members sign a non-disclosure agreement where they can't talk about the board proceedings in detail. Well, now what you have, now that person who did not know if they were number 51 or 200 now knows they are number 200. That's a significant emotional event of finding out that, hey, you know what, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. The other issue I think that comes about is predictability. Before, I knew if I had a sequence number of 50, I would get promoted, whether within 12, 18, 20, almost 24 months like yourself. But I knew at some point I'm going to get promoted. Now I could be number 5, to the point about the MQ, I could be number 5 on an OML that only promotes 3 people that year. Now I'm back into the OML process for the next year where I might be number 17 because new people are coming in. So there's not a lot of predictability there to know whether or not you're going to get promoted. And now some soldiers are going to make that decision, like those 130 from the USASMA class that said, hey, you want me to go to school, spend time definitely away from family, whether they're there with you or not, because it's a school environment. And now I don't know if I'm even going to get promoted at the end of the day. I may still retire as a master sergeant with sergeant major credit. So those are just a couple kind of the thoughts that I've seen just in the early going of the evaluation process.
And what did you want to talk about today, Sergeant Major?
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, kind of hand in hand, the board process, a little bit kind of the OML. I think a lot of people don't understand the board process. And so what happens is people focus on evaluations, which is good. Your evaluation is your report card. Now that we've taken DA photo out and some of these other things, that gives that evaluation even more importance and significance. And so understanding what qualifies with the new NCOER, to me it's still new. There are things that I see on there and I learn new things every day of how that works. Is young non-commissioned officers, even at the sergeant level where it's just met standard or did not meet standard, having that knowledge and understanding of NCOERs and how that plays into later on a OML evaluation board and stuff like that.
And so, the HRC website has a lot of good resources, like kind of explaining the board process, demystifying a lot of it. So what do you think is one of the common misconceptions then about enlisted boards?
So I think a lot of it goes down to, we came in under a certain system 20 years ago. There were a lot of myths about it, that, hey, somebody came in with, these are my 5, and I'm going to select my 5 guys, and, whatever case may be. I think it's understanding the evaluation, what represents, far exceeds the standard, exceeds the standard, met standard. We're all pretty clear on what did not meet the standard means. But understanding what you have to do to be successful in your particular MOS. For example, I talk to people all the time about promotions, and I say, hey, I'm a 79 Sierra, so when I was competing for Sergeant First Class and Master Sergeant, I had a 42 Alpha on my board. I had a finance on my board, a JAG, Corps person. I think the chaplain's on there. 7 or 8 different MOSs, the band, recruiters. How we tailor our evaluation sometimes, we look at maybe what's important as a public affairs NCO, right? Who else sits on that board, though? I'm not asking, but just as an example, how does your evaluation talk to the other board members on how you integrate with those particular MOSs? Oftentimes, if you want to kind of guarantee yourself a seat at the table, that's what you have to do. So for me, as I was coming up, I work with the G1 here all the time. I also work with my S1. So those other board members, it doesn't matter whether you're a 79, a 42, a 89, who else sits on those boards, and how do you interface with them on a daily basis, and how you articulate that on an NCOER will definitely put you more competitive, right? 42s might not know exactly what the 79 does, but if I put on my NCOER coordinated with the S1 to reduce turnaround time on orders process or whatever case may be, now that 42 Sergeant Major CSM that's sitting on the board say, oh, wow, they work with my guys, and so sometimes it's some of the smaller things that we don't really look at. Most non-commissioned officers do well at their job if they're competing for promotion. Got it. Hey, I write re-enlistment contracts, I do reclassification actions, got it. But I'm only really talking to one board member at that point. How do I interface with the finance office? Oh, guess what? Me and Sergeant Major Boynton talk all the time about soldiers' pay and being here past their ETS. How can I articulate that on an NCOER? So to me, that's one of the, I won't say a misconception, but it's one of the things that people don't think about when they prepare their evaluation.
So you need to be proactive about looking and see what other MOSs are on your board, and look at how you can speak their language too on your evaluation. How you're not just communicating it to your MOS, but other ones too.
Absolutely. And if you look at it from I'll use the semi-centralized board process, which myself and Sergeant Major Witter sit on every month. You don't just focus on the one board member that might have something that does with your job, right? If I'm a medic, right, if I'm a 68 series, I'm not just going to tailor my preparation for this board to the person that has first aid. Right? Guess what? I have to know what NCOERs are. I have to know the APFT, ACFT standards. I have to know awards and decorations. To me, it's pretty much a G1 specific board, it looked like at some point. But the reality is we don't prepare our sergeants and our specialists and sergeants to only talk to one board member. But when we become seniors, all of a sudden all we care about is, that one board member who we generally have somebody who has sat on a board who gives us kind of the overview at some point when you start going to training. But we don't prepare for that. We don't prepare our younger, soon-to-be non-commissioned officers like that. And so going forward, I tell everybody who wants to listen, talk to all the board members like you would at a semi-centralized promotion board, and I guarantee you are going to compete better than you're competing now.
I will also offer that I think it has a lot to do with understanding how to extend your influence beyond the chain of command. I think also NCOs don't get that exposure to other MOSs until they go to the Sergeant Major's Academy. And that's when it becomes almost an importance to understand that it is a lot of those MOSs, combat arms, that will sit on those nominative boards. And that is when, and I think we do our NCO Corps a disservice by not explaining that process early on in the career to say, hey, you about to be a sergeant. Now is the time to learn how to extend your influence beyond the chain of command. How do you get out into those challenging MOSs that will expose you to those combat arm MOSs or those MOSs that are not, say, public affairs or 42 Alpha or 79 Sierra. So I think that is something that we do need to do. We probably need to do better with taking care of our NCO Corps.
And so would you suggest, should you keep that consideration in mind when looking at next assignments, like going to places that would expose you to other MOSs, like multifunction brigades, or how do you expose yourself then to?
I think ways to soldiers and NCOs can expose themselves to other MOSs is take those challenging assignments. A lot of soldiers shy away from drill sergeant, but there are a lot of combat arms that go to be drill sergeants. A lot of soldiers shy away from doing recruiting, but there are a melting pot of MOSs that go to recruiting. I'm talking about 88 series, 79 series, 68 series that you normally probably wouldn't have those exposures to. Also take on the assignments of going to is it the SFAB?
Yes, the
SFAB, which is another brigade or battalion that they can go to and get that integration into those MOSs.
And one thing that I've been told repeatedly, like in the AARs from the boards, is like each board member has access to the DA PAM that shows what the career progression should be. So like I think most NCOs have seen that, like it's like, oh, by the time you're staff sergeant, you should do these things. And so all the board members are looking at that too. And so that should play into how you look for your next assignment.
So the 42 Alpha 60 that would sit on the panel will give a briefing according to the DA PAM and say this is what makes that 42 Alpha 30 most qualified. If they did these MOSs, if they have this much time in their actual field, being an S1, a brigade S1, a G1, that is what sets them apart from their peers. So not only does the 42 Alpha does that, but also the 36 Bravo 60 that's sitting on the board. They will also explain to that panel, this is what makes that particular Sergeant First Class most qualified. This is what makes that Master Sergeant most qualified. So not only, I would also offer not to just do a job just to meet a benchmark because you're trying to work for the next promotion. I think sometimes that can get lost in translation as well.
And I would add on to that, just to kind of piggyback off of what she said there at the end, the career map shows you how to be competitive. And I think we're going to talk about the ask 'em here in a little bit. But at the end of the day, I tell people, you have to understand what your purpose is in a unit, right? And if you chase positions, sometimes you miss your purpose, right? And so here, as it's definitely known, I operated outside of the retention realm quite a bit, based off of what my purpose was and what the CG tasked me to do. I am an example of a person, at least in my MOS, who did not hold two key billet positions that traditionally are required to make sergeant major. It wasn't because I didn't want to do it or I didn't volunteer. I went where the Army told me to go. I rarely get my hands involved in the assignment process. Hey, I go wherever I got to go. And so I say that to say to those who listen to this podcast, figure out what makes you relevant and what your purpose is in that organization and be the best non-commissioned officer, not the best 42 Alpha, not the best 79, not the best 46. Be the best non-commissioned officer and leader inside of your organization. Articulate that properly on your NCOER, and you will be competitive for promotion. It's not all about the drill sergeant badge or the instructor badge or the recruiter badge or career counselor badge. It's about being the best leader you can be in your organization, meeting your commander or platoon or whoever's intent, and do the right things while you're in that organization, articulate it correctly on the NCOER, and you'll still be competitive.
Sounds good. And with that, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and talk about, Sergeant Major mentioned, Ask 'em and some other topics here right on the Every Soldier Counts podcast.
Are you a new soldier looking to explore Korea? Or maybe a soldier who's been here for a while and is running out of things to do? I'm PFC Nathan Ertz, and I'm your 19th DSC Boss Rep. BOSS stands for Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers. We have events like every other Thursday we have a bowling night at your local bowling alley. We have a Korean cooking class where you can learn to make kimbap, ramen, and other Korean food, as well as a diving class that will get you certified to go diving at one of Korea's many beaches. For more information, please visit our Facebook page at Boss Area 4 or find me in your unit.
And we're back on the Every Soldier Counts podcast. Sergeant First Class Adam Ross. I'm joined again by Sergeant Major Adam Bartlett with our retention team and Sergeant Major Angelia Witter with G1. And so when we stopped, Sergeant Major Bartlett, you were talking about boards, and we were talking about with this new system with the OML, the MQs is a term we're going to be familiar with. So what has jumped out to you seeing these trends for MQs?
Okay, so wanted to just delve a little bit deeper into the board, how they rate records, what's the highest score you can get, what's the lowest score, what do these scores really mean, which is kind of interesting because a soldier generally does not know their score, how they score on the board. Anyway, the highest score someone can get is a 6+ on a board file review. The lowest they can get is a 1. 1 means denied continued service, no potential for continued service, and basically you're not qualified for retention, which is going to lead to some bad stuff happening probably the next 180 days after that. Now, I will say that generally that should not come as a galloping shock to the non-commissioned officer when they're not qualified for retention. Normally that means they have a general officer memorandum of reprimand, they have an Article 15, they've done something, so generally not a galloping shock. 2 gets into retain but do not promote, basically a weak performer, lacks experience or qualifications, and if a master sergeant gets a rating of a 2 on the evaluation board, they are not eligible for sergeant major course attendance. So it's good information to know. And like I say, basically that means you're not fully qualified. At that time, you're given a notice from Headquarters Department of the Army, and if you get a subsequent not qualified, then you will be separated in 180 days after that board convenes. 3, getting into the 3s through 6s, all right? So a 3 is promote if there's a requirement. Basically, hey, you're an average performer potential, right? I'm going to pause for a quick second there to say that average, and a lot of people don't like to hear that. When you start talking average, mediocre, Met standard, bottom line is, by definition, 50 to 60% of the Army should be average. That's how you establish what's above average, what's below average is kind of known. Generally, people should, in a good system, fall into the 3 or 4 range. 4 mean promote with peers, still a solid performer, good potential. Again, probably two Met standards maybe on the NCOER, a couple exceed standard, maybe 1 far exceeds. That puts you in the 3 or 4 range. 5, promote ahead of peers, outstanding performer, outstanding potential. In order to get a most qualified, right, you have to score on average a 5.5 or higher across that board panel, right? So when you see that MQ that's on the release list of the fully qualified list, if someone has a most qualified next to them, that means they averaged a 5.5 or higher score on this scale of 1 to 6, okay? So those are people who, again, don't know exactly how they scored on the board, but we do know they scored at least a 5.5, which is pretty remarkable. Not all MOSs have. I'm not on the board, so I can't tell why somebody would not, or why a MOS would not have at least 1 most qualified. My intuition says that if we had 10 people in this room right now and somebody said, all right, Sergeant Major Bartlett, rank them 1 through 10, somebody's going to be number 1. To me, that's my most qualified person. Now, if you take my 1 and put them with 20 others from throughout the ESC and put them in there, they might not be the ESC's number 1, but that's my number 1, right? And so when you kind of take that logic and you think about how these board proceedings are happening, 79 Sierra had 5 MQs on the Master Sergeant Evaluation Board for Class 72. 5. 11 series, I think, didn't have 1. And there were some MOSs that didn't have 1. So it does make you kind of think. Now, it could be that 79 Sierras performed better than 42 Alphas on the board. And so therefore on that, we had 5 MQs. No slight towards the
Don't worry about it.
But it's important that we understand kind of how that operates. Somebody could get a fully qualified as a 3-, still be fully qualified for promotion. Now, their chances of getting promoted, probably not very likely. But guess what? You could have an MOS that maybe all of them were 4s. And now that person who had a 4+ on the board is going to get promoted because they didn't have anybody above them. So just wanted to kind of break that down, what that means when you start talking about not fully qualified for retention, not fully qualified, and then those most qualified people with the 5.5 or higher.
And we were in the board process. The senior, we're always told that the senior rater comments are the ones that board members pay the most attention to. So, Sergeant Major Witter, can you talk about soldiers engaging with their senior raters? Kind of how that's something we train our junior NCOs to do.
So I think the senior rater has to create their environment in as it pertains to ensuring that rated soldier can come and talk to them and say, hey, what are your expectations? What would it take to get the most qualified? What does it take to get a qualified in your books? I think it's just an open dialogue that sometimes in some instances are initiated by the senior rater, and then in some instances the rated NCO has to initiate that. I know we talked during the break in reference to what if there's distance between the rated NCO and the senior rater. I think it just goes back to finding those ways to open or create that communication channel. We have so much technology at our disposal now, whether or not that's MS Teams, whether or not that's WhatsApp, whether or not that's Facebook, whatever. We have so many technology means at our disposal that there isn't an excuse or a reason why that dialogue cannot be created. Sometimes it may even come to the point where if, let's say, the rated NCO is at Fort Benning, Georgia, and the senior rater happens to be at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, if funding allows in that unit for that rated NCO to say, hey, I'm going to just take a TDY, I'm going to go sit down with my command sergeant major, I'm going to go sit down with my senior rater, and we're going to have some discussion. I think that rated NCOs need to utilize that capabilities to their strength or to their benefit. I will also offer that is something that we have to do better with taking care of our NCO Corps with as well, and letting the junior NCO know that, okay, you're coming in and this is what right looks like.
And that would probably make life easier for the senior rater too, like if they have a face and a personality to attach with the comments that they're seeing from the rater.
Yes. Well. Especially when we create that environment, if there is a conflict between the rated NCO and the rater, that senior rater is, by definition, is the one that's supposed to say, okay, I see both sides and this is where I'm at. And it also provides the opportunity for that senior rater to say, I can't make you as the rater change your comments, but this is how I view it. They're kind of the buffer, the middle person, if there is a conflict. So a lot of, we all know that as the rated NCO, our only job on the evaluation is to check and make sure and verify that our admin data is correct. But I also will offer that it is also important for us to have our hands into our career. And we know that as we get ready to go to the centralized boards, once we become staff sergeants and we're starting to get evaluated, we know that one piece of paper is our career, and we must take the necessary steps to be involved in it.
Yeah, and I would add too, the senior rater, those comments weigh the most heavily on a promotion board. Part of that is because what the rater puts on there generally is, I don't want to say emotion driven, but that rater's the person who is directly with that person, especially when you get to the senior ranks. They want to get that person promoted, or maybe they don't, but the senior rater is supposed to be the balance of that. One thing that I tell a lot of people is, you have to know your senior rater's expectations. And it's okay to ask the senior rater when you get there as an initial part of the initial counseling, what will it take to get most qualified? What does that look like? Now, that senior rater may divulge to you, I don't have a most qualified to give because they're locked at 24%. If they give their first person the most qualified, it takes 7 more evaluations before they can give another one. So sometimes people want to hold it, sometimes it's, well, hey, you're number one right now, but if I give you this number one, I can't give anybody else the most qualified for 6, 7 more evaluations. So understanding those expectations, and something that I picked up a few years ago, I'll ask my senior rater, who's the best sergeant major you've had? What does that look like? And then that person, generally, we know who our number one person was at those ranks, and they'll tell you, well, hey, the number one master sergeant or sergeant first class I had was this person, they did da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then you have kind of that conversation of, okay, all right, so that's in their mental model what their number one sergeant first class they've worked with in 22 years looks like. Okay, what are some things that I can take away from that? And then how do I build to be in the top 10%, top 5, or whatever the case may be? So it definitely helps to be able to have that open dialogue. And like Sergeant Major Witter said, sometimes you might not be co-located, or you're in this headquarters and people are running, every which way every day. whenever you do get that opportunity, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, update them on what you've been doing, your progress, what are your main goals and objectives. And it just makes it a better process to where you're not caught off guard when they say you're number 5 out of 5 Sergeant First Class I senior rate. And they're like, wait, it's too late. Once that's been put on there, it's pretty much too late to be able to do that. And it doesn't require a negative counseling to be number 5 out of 5. You may be a 4+ according to the board process, but I got a 6 and a couple 5s in there, and that's just kind of where you stack. So when it comes to the senior rater, it's important that it's enumerated, that those comments reflect an accurate opinion, not the cookie cutter stuff, related to that particular non-commissioned officer. Hey, this is what I see, and kind of go on about it.
Yeah, and I would say, Sergeant Major, too, my first staff sergeant in COER, I never met my senior rater or my rater. They were 3,000 miles away. So, I wish that I had taken a more, proactive approach, that even I thought my work would stand for itself. And so even though I had really good bullets, again, like you said, the board may not be really taking the time to go through all those bullets. They're just looking at what the senior rater says. So, Sergeant Major Witter, we were also going to talk about the new ASCM system for assignments. So ASCM, that stands for Enlisted Marketplace it's similar to the officer system, AIM.
Yes. Right. So basically the NCOs who are within the, so ASCM does stand for Assignment Satisfaction Key Enlisted Module. So we're currently in the market now for the enlisted, which closes on the 8th of June at midnight Eastern Standard Time. It's an opportunity for NCOs who are eligible for movement to have some impact on their career, have some say-so in what's the next assignment.
And how it was explained to me a little bit, because there's a lot of information out there about it, again, on the HRC website. So previously we had ASK, Assignment Satisfaction Key, and that factored somewhat into what your next assignment could be. But the ASCM is just kind of like a larger version of that, like a supercharged version where you can actually see what assignments are available. Right.
So yes, with the ASK, if you go in, you give preference on what duty station, you get your 3 top preferences, which is Fort Stewart, Fort Gordon, or Fort Belvoir. However, with the ASCM module or enlisted module, essentially what happens is you see what requisitions are out there, and you're able to go in there and place your preference. So if there are 10 assignments that are available during your time to move, you go in there, you rank, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are also broadening assignments out there that soldiers can make sure it will outline what is the operating, and it will also outline what is the broadening assignments.
And so what has your experience been so far with a couple of these iterations of the marketplace? Soldiers generally had a good experience with it?
I haven't heard any complaints about whether or not they have any gripes about it. I think it is a way to create transparency between HRC, the talent managers at HRC, and also the soldiers. It also provides a better predictability, especially for those soldiers that have families, in reference to when it's time for them to move, where they're going to go. Spouses can start looking for places for that soldier and their family to live, whatever the case may be. So it creates some transparency. And I think it's a good way to say that soldiers have some involvement in their career. It's not waiting till it's time for them to re-enlist to say, okay, I want to go here. It actually starts then.
And in Korea, we know when we have our DROs, we know when we're going to leave. But I think especially like in a CONUS environment where you're like, well, maybe I'm going to be moving at this time, or maybe now you have like an actual year-month date of when you're going to be expected to be moving. Right.
So the year-month is when that soldier's available to move. And then, of course, with the module now, they're able to have a better what date they can expect to move, what month and time expected to move. So just because they're available to move doesn't mean they're going to move on the date they're available. They may move after the eval date or the available date, but they may also move before, and that's all contingent on what the Army's requirements are, what the Army's needs are.
And Sergeant Major Bartlett, what do you tell soldiers when they're thinking about like potential next assignments?
Okay, so one of the changes that came about when we started this enlisted marketplace was retention said, well, what about us? And so one thing they did do, the mid-career non-commissioned officers are not in ASCM. They will come to retention and still process as before. So that was kind of the agreement that was made between retention reclassification branch and HRC, whatever office managers, the movement assignment managers, was it allows us to still be able to do what we do as career counselors and talk to those mid-career non-commissioned officers who otherwise would fall into the ASCM, and then we kind of run that. Now, one of the things that we have not reconciled, and then we continue to engage HRC, and we hope one day we'll get an answer, where does talent management fit into this process? If I'm number 1 through 10 on an OML, I should not theoretically be seeing the same assignments as whoever's number 150 and 160. How they are reconciling talent management with the enlisted marketplace still kind of is murky waters, because if you're applying talent management to moves, then I should get a higher priority assignment. If I'm number 1 and she's number 30, I should get a higher priority assignment. How they decide who comes to Korea, and I think Sergeant Major Witter will cover a little later about where your OML number factors into even as you PCS and get assignment, and how when you talk about staff sergeant first class, how does that gaining G1 CSM through enlisted talent management at the local level assign that person within the organization? Because as I look at ASCM kind of gives you a location, may give you a brigade. I'm not 100%.
It talks about the replacement. Like if someone they see a requisition for Korea, it would just say 19th replacement. That's what it say. It doesn't go all the way down to the brigade.
So like 19th has several battalions. So like a soldier an NCO that would likely end up at like 25th Transportation Battalion, they would still see just 19th
replacement.
Okay.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so it doesn't tell you whether you're going to be a platoon sergeant, a section sergeant, as we start to get these sergeants first class in, detachment sergeant, or maybe even a vacant first sergeant position. It doesn't tell you all of that. It just gives you that replacement for that particular DMSL, I think is as far down as it goes. So then there's still the talent management requirement, HRC sending them to a location, and then that senior command, G1, CSM, talent management process, placing that person in an assignment. So still kind of it is a good process. We just have not really been able to reconcile talent management from when a soldier goes into ASCM and sees that location with that DMSL brigade. What does that translate to them as far as talent management?
And do you know, is that where branch managers come into? Like, can they give the NCO more clarity on what the assignment would be? So
the branch manager can't trump the local CSM. Generally, brigade CSMs are going to manage a lot of this personnel that's in ASCM once they get where they're going. So the branch manager is more the location. They may have some idea of what position may be opening, especially when you start talking about sergeant first class or master sergeant. But it's still on that local G1 to actually assign them to a position.
And I also would venture to say that it's also about communication. So with the OML, with the evaluation boards, we do not know where that NCO is on the OML. So if that NCO would like to disclose that I am number X out of 200, whether or not that's number 3 out of 200 or number 199 out of 200, that NCO has that right to disclose that information. I also would say that with talent management, just because we have the ASCM now does not say that the NCO cannot call their talent manager at HRC and say, okay, I'm thinking about going here. What are the pros and cons? Based on what you see in my records, am I competitive if I take this assignment, or if I rank this assignment or this requisition as number 1 versus number 6?
So the branch managers still have a role to play in it, because I think when a lot of people think about ASCM, it sounds like an automated system almost. But the branch managers still can advise the soldiers, on what for the best in their career, where they should go.
Yes, because essentially they are the talent manager. They are the ones that say, okay, when we look at the MOS in its entirety, And if this, let's just say the NCO calls their talent manager and say, okay, I understand that based off this last evaluation board, I am number 50 out of 60. What do I need to do? What assignment should I take to improve my OML standing? But also the NCO has to understand that with that evaluation board, where you are today may not be where you are next year, since it's an annual evaluation. If the soldier has not taken a broadening assignment, maybe getting that input or that advice from not only the talent manager, but maybe that command sergeant major, maybe that platoon sergeant, say, okay, or first sergeant, where this is where I'm at, or having a mentor, this is where I'm at, what's going to make me more competitive. These are the assignments. And if that NCO hasn't taken a broadening assignment, we never know, that may be the deciding factor on whether or not they remain at their current OML standing, whether or not they go down in their OML standing, or maybe even the thing that pushes them forward in their OML standing.
Right. And, when you talk about the assignment process, there's two elements at play, generally. Needs of the Army, personal preferences, right? One of the biggest knocks on the previous before the marketplace was, I call branch, they tell me I can go to Fort Drum. I can only go to Fort Polk. Not hating those assignments; those just aren't in my top 50 locations, right? So it gives a little bit more transparency of, hey, this is what is available. This is what you're still kind of competing in the marketplace. Guess what? They may have 10 locations, starting with Hawaii and Savannah, Georgia, and those great locations, ending with Fort Polk, Fort Drum, NTC, whatever the case may be. Somebody's going to wind up going to NTC. And the chances of, unless there's a personal preference at play of somebody saying, I want to go to NTC, out of 10 people, you might have 0 that select NTC. The bottom line is somebody's going to NTC because that is the needs of the Army. Now, part of where we go with that conversation is a third element, which is career enhancement. How do I enhance my career and my career development in line with needs of the Army and balancing personal preferences? And that's where those talent managers at HRC, your local career counselor, retention office, says, hey, I know you want to go to Hawaii, but you do know you were in Hawaii for 10 consecutive years some kind of a way. If you want to remain competitive for promotion, maybe you need to go be a drill sergeant. Maybe you need to go recruiting and do a broadening assignment. So that still kind of is at play, but your number 2 priorities when it comes to assignment, number 1, it will always be needs of the Army. And then number 2 is the personal preferences of that service member going forward.
And so, yeah, I see what you mean, Sergeant Major, with transparency, because I think and Sergeant Major Witter mentioned it too, like even like the nominative positions, which in the past you may not even have known about, just talking with the old system, those are all going to be on there. So it'll open up, a lot of people's eyes to those other assignments.
Absolutely. I was at First Army for 3 years. I had no clue what First Army was until I got there. And I didn't go there until I had 15 years in the Army. And it was like, oh, wow, we have a whole 3-star command that does this, And then you hear about the ROTC stuff, the ACRC, and kind of those other cadet command kind of assignments where you're like, wow, I didn't know that those existed. So it does definitely open that up. It creates a little bit more work for my office because now we have to talk to people about these other places and, hey, what does that mean as far as competitive for promotion while doing that broadening assignment as well?
I think also the bonus of having this ASCM is not only does it create transparency, it affords the NCO the opportunity to do research. Is this the best location for my family? Like, we do have to think about how those assignments are going to impact our families if we have families. How does this play a part in my career? Is this probably the best assignment? And just being able to just say, okay, I'm gonna do the research. This is my number 1 preference. I've had this discussion with my family if I'm married or if I have children. This is what we believe would be best for our family, but also best for my career and hopefully meet the intent of the Army.
And Sergeant Major, you said you had a MILPER message hot off the press you wanted to mention.
Yes, so I know we're currently in PCS season. So there is a MILPER message that just came out yesterday in the state's MILPER message 21-180, which talks about the outlines of reporting times and early arrival for our soldiers that are PCS and back to the states. If a soldier is not authorized early reporting coming out of Korea, they need to ensure that they understand that they have to report on their report date and not before then. If they're seeking to report early, to submit their curtailment requests or even a approval for early reporting, to get that authorized through their local chain of command.
And so, that's only for soldiers leaving Korea or any OCONUS assignment coming to CONUS? So
if early reporting is authorized, that soldier is authorized to report to Korea between the AVAL date and the authorization, the AVAL date and the reporting date. If early reporting is not authorized, they have to report here on the report date.
So when you have your orders, pay close attention to whether it says early reporting is authorized or not.
And it may say 30 days early reporting authorized. It may say 60 days. So just make sure soldiers understand to look at their orders and read them in their entirety.
And that's another thing too, where you really need to communicate with your gaining unit if you want to report early, even if it says early report authorized, you still want to be communicating with your unit in Korea.
Now, if I need a 42 Alpha, I'm not going to turn that down to report early or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it just depends on what the situation is. Sometimes early reporting has absolutely nothing to do with the gaining unit. It may have more so to do with, do I need to enroll my children in school on time? Does my spouse have a job that is opening up and this is the date they want to report? So sometimes early reporting, if it's not in the orders and you go through your S1s or your G1s to process the paperwork and get it up to HRC, that would have to be the explanation. The explanation is because my spouse starts work on such date, or because I'm trying to enroll my children in school.
But in Korea too, with quarantine and everything, we'd love to know when someone is arriving too in country to help with the reception and quarantine.
Now that part with communication leaving from the States is crucial to ensuring that we have visibility on who is going into the quarantine, who received their vaccination, who's only going to meet the gates at Camp Humphreys, and who we know will be in quarantine because they were not fully vaccinated before they got here to Korea.
Okay. All right. Lots of good information. Anything else we didn't hit that we want to include?
Well, I could stay here and talk all day, but no, I thought it was pretty good. I think I've got everything that I want.
And Sergeant Major Bartlett, want to wish you good luck in your next assignment. Thank you for everything you've done here at 19th ESC. I know your time here is very short.
Yes, very short, extremely short. I'm going to probably the number one location I wanted to go to, which is Hawaii. So, I'll be sure to send postcards back to the 19th ESC.
Okay. Well, and good luck to you as well. Sergeant Major Witter, we've got you here for a little bit longer. So maybe we'll have you back one more time on the podcast.
Awesome sauce.
All right. Well, thanks again to our guests, and we will talk to you once again here on the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast. If you haven't subscribed yet on your podcast app, please do so, and we'll talk to you next time on the Every Soldier Counts podcast.